Yo, hello, and we have woken up to some very interesting news. First of all, we are going to be having Ranked Battles Series 2 with Paradox Pokemon on February 1st. And this is a very interesting trend, right? So I think it can't be understated how much this is going to change the meta. It's like, I think easy examples are like, let's look at like our fastest Pokemon in the metagame currently. If you just look at all these like fast Pokemon, right? It's like there's Dragapult, but that's like not used quite as much, but you look at these are like the premier kind of like fast Pokemon in this metagame. And then because of this, the addition of Paradox Pokemon, that's completely changed. Like Bundle and Flutter are so fast that they actually turned Meowscarlet from what is a premier Pokemon into a little less good, because it's going to get outsped by these Pokemon that can just OHKO it. And I think that's one of the more like premier early thoughts of how like this is going to interact with the metagame, right? It's just how this like completely changes this is speed dynamic and this overall like also having to consider an item like, let's say, booster energy on stuff. Because booster energy is a item that of course activates photosynthesis or quark drive for these Paradox Mons. Essentially meaning that Paradox Mons can have like a lot higher stats than you may expect them to. And that's something that makes them like inherently very scary, right? And that's not something to be underestimated, you know? And this will go like the power of these Pokemon too. Like, I think an easy example of like this complete power creep here, Iron Hands being like such a premier fighting electric type too. We finally have a fighting type that can truly just like sit. Like if you put Assault Vest on Iron Hands, there's basically very few things in the meta that can really just deal with it. I think another Pokemon that's like heavily impacted by this change is actually like Hydreigon. Because Hydreigon has Dark Dragon typing, it now always will have to Terrasilize in order to deal with the premier threats in this meta of Flutter Mane and Iron Bundle. And then you look at Pokemon like Murkrow too. Like, if Murkrow sets Tailwind, even a team is not going to outspeed a Booster Energy. Most Pokemon are not going to outspeed Booster Energy Iron Bundle, even with Tailwind. Or Booster Energy Flutter Mane with Tailwind. Because of this, how like absurdly faster these Pokemon are, right? And because of that, that also changes the dynamic of how like Murkrow teams can function essentially. And Murkrow teams have to be more reliant on these Paradox Mons in themselves. So the meta like completely changes to a point where Paradox Mons are like that much ahead of everything else. And there's also like other notable ones, right? Like you got Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon's still like a very good Pokemon. Though it has similar like Hydreigon problems, it's acts as a bit more competition to Hydreigon in the sense like you have a lot of sets you can run with this. It's more of a dedicated terrestrial Pokemon, but it can still take advantage of a lot of interesting things like Terraflying, Acrobatics. There's a lot of like interesting sets that it can have, and it still has access to moves like Tailwind too, so it could just be a fast Tailwind user. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is interesting, though probably not one of the better ones. Like, a lot of these Pokemon are, like, fundamentally very strong. And even the weaker ones are strong enough that they have, like, a good enough ability to impact the meta. Like, let's look at Valiant, one I don't particularly expect to be, like, at the top of the metagame. Valiant has, like, the unique, this asset of this being so fast. You can go, like, this enough speed, and then you can have it boost your energy for speed. And then run a mix set with, like, Moonblast CC, and that's, like, offensively, this handles a lot of the metagame this well enough that it's like very annoying. And with the boost energy, you're going to outspeed stuff like Meowscarlet, and you still outspeed stuff like Mouseholds naturally too. And that's like this another example of this how these Paradox Pokemon can really just impact the meta. And not to mention, like, we get more real electric types. Like I already mentioned Iron Hands, for example, as an electric type. But I do think actually Sandy Shocks is not a horrible Pokemon. Because Sandy Shocks has like a couple interesting things, right? Like let's say you're against someone trying to abuse a Sun team, for example. You can go like Choice Scarf, Sandy Shocks. And if someone uses some kind of like Sun setup to make their like Flutter Mane go faster without taking advantage of booster energy or something, or uses a comp like that, then with Scarf Sandy Shocks, you'll always outspeed that. And you can also go some spreads where you just like always get the speed booster energy on this, where you can go something like, oh, I have to make it level 50. But yeah, you can always guarantee you get like speed booster energy if you want to run it like that too. And it has like a very interesting moveset as well. Because like Electric Ground is a very often like sought after offensive like offensive typings and defensive typings. Because like Ground gives you like the immunity to Electric, and Electric's always like a solid offensive typing for like pivoting and this being like general good utility and helping you deal with like flying types too. Unfortunately, this doesn't get like Electro Web. That's like a major loss for it, but still just having this alone, like these are decent moves. And it also has like some gimmicky sets too. Like this is the first Pokemon we got with Gravity that's actually kind of usable. So there's interesting stuff there like that as well. I do think even Pokemon like Slitherwing are stronger than a lot of the current metagame. Though I think Slitherwing as a Pokemon is probably something that's going to want to be with Rain, as its bug fighting typing kind of requires Rain to be like really useful. So it can at least mitigate some of its weakness. Or it's like a dedicated Terrestrial typing where you just always go Terrafire and just use like Flare Blitz. Because this is technically the strongest first impression user we've ever had, which is something that makes it a bit interesting. Because like if you're able to have a first impression that strong, that's like kind of concerning. Because like Lizapod was always like somewhat usable, and this has 125 first impression. This has 135 with the potential of being boosted by Photosynthesis, so it's not like horrible. It's kind of like Buzzwole in a lot of sense, though it doesn't have like the access to Beast Boost or like the absurd defense stat. But instead you get like a more balanced stat spread, and you get like comparative power, and it's like, and then a unique ability in Photosynthesis, so it's not like it's completely outclassed. So I think it will have like similar kind of idea to Buzzwole, so it won't necessarily be like top of the meta, but it's something that I consider to be still fundamentally interesting. There's a lot of stuff like that in this metagame. And I think all the Iron Mons, even like Iron Moth is interesting. It doesn't get Sludge Bomb, but it's just like fast, powerful. And like Iron Treads, this has a ridiculously good typing. Great Tusk is a very good offensive Pokemon too with ground fighting typing. A typing that is very sought after, because like fighting type is this, I think I've went over this in like meta review videos of this, how powerful the dark typing is. And of course like Ruin legendaries aren't added yet, and we only have Paradox Mons in series 2. But we already were in a metagame where we were all playing like Hydreigons, we were all playing all these like very powerful dark type Pokemon. So this having offensive fighting types that are this powerful is very useful in itself. Great Tusk does have like some competition in Garchomp, but still having like this a very different typing, not having any like 4 times weaknesses. There's like decent use case for Great Tusk in comparison to Garchomp for sure. Like I think there's just a lot of unique viability to a lot of these Terrestrial, a lot of these Paradox Pokemon, and they're completely changing the metagame. And this brings up like another point, right? I feel like honestly, I kind of feel like these Pokemon are a little, I think that shouldn't have been introduced yet. And to explain that is just to simply say, since they're going to be coming in February, right? That means we've only got one regional under the actual rule set, right? And I do believe Orlando has like confirmed that they will have the Series 1 rule set, though it's still like something that's could be revoked because like we're not gonna have ladder for Series 1 at that point, so it's not really like a very great thing to have regionals under Series 1 if you're gonna have like the ladder be Series 2, and it is something that has technically happened before, but it's still like a little problematic if they do it that way, I'll say. And like I think that's something to potentially look out for. But yeah, all the Paradox Mons are definitely going to be like viable in some sense. I do think their Mons like Iron Thorns, for example, are kind of like the weak end of it. But overall, I think it's just like hard to say that they're not going to just dominate the meta. And this brings up my like next point, because I was talking about how like Meowscarada, faster mons like Mousehold kind of get a bit weaker, right? They really weren't given much time to shine. Like, they're gonna have December, a month where we didn't have any regionals, any live events, and they're gonna have like January, where there's San Diego regionals, and then there's like for Europe there's Liverpool regionals. Overall, it's just like it's very lacking. I feel it's not exactly a very great ending to the format. I would have much preferred them to actually wait a bit to adjust the rule set to add Paradox Mons back, just so that format would have more time to breathe, right? Because I think having Paradox Mons is such a big change that losing a format after like one regional is a bit too much. I would have much preferred them to wait till like March, for example, till we get the meta change. Though admittedly it is kind of cool to see some new options be brought back. Though of course, knowing how like powerful these mons are comparatively, I do feel it's a bit concerning in some senses. Like even like Iron Treads, all these mons are like very potentially strong, very potentially great typings. As like I'm a bit disappointed in that sense, for sure. But overall, I am still looking forward to it. I do this genuinely enjoy playing VGC in general, so any like little rule set change is of course like very fun for me as just a player. Though as a competitor, it does make me a bit nervous, you know? But yeah, that's really all my thoughts that I just want to get out of the way really fast. Let me know what you guys think of like the sudden switch to Series 2 on coming in February. And what you think about Paradox Mons being legal now, and how you look forward and how you think they'll approach the next regional championships later in like Knoxville, and the international championships in Oceania, I believe, will also be in February. So what do you think they're going to have Oceania on? They're going to change Oceania to be Series 2, or will they keep it Series 1? Because I think that's a bit of a mystery in a sense. And if they're really just going to end Series 1 where it's just like no events, I do feel like Melbourne is probably going to adjust to Series 2. I do believe it actually says on its stuff that it will be under Series 1, because if you look here, right, let me see, I do believe it says somewhere, yeah, okay, yeah, it says they will compete in Series 1 rules. But I feel like that's something that they're actually going to change post-haste, and this was just a social media, a website intern that's being like, yeah, I just need to get this page out, right? So I don't think this necessarily means the Oceania Internationals and some of these events will be Series 1, especially with the ladder and being like 2 weeks into the format at that point. I don't think Oceania should be Series 1, because we're not going to have a ladder again. But it is something that has to be like looked at, right? But yeah, if you guys just let me know if you guys think they will actually like keep Series 1 like they say on the website, or do you think they will like change? What your expectations of how the format could change with this new rule set as well? Because I think it's personally going to be like really massive and all that stuff. It's going to be like incredibly massive, because Paradox Mons are this like so good in comparison to a lot of like the regional decks we have right now. And of course, I think the last important thing to say is like Cinderace and Charizard will not be legal, but I think that was a bit too expected. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. That's all for today. Later.